Dåliga tider minskar toleransen. I Storbritannien till exempel begränsar man nu invandringen. Konkurrensen om jobben och pressen på skola och sjukvård anges som skäl. Men precis som i Sverige är den brittiska sjukvården helt beroende av utlandsfödda. Vår utsända rapporterar från London och Manchester.
Här i Peckham utanför London så är 70% av alla invånare födda i andra länder i världen.
Everybody wants a better future, so they're searching for that. So they think if they think is good for them, they migrate from the one place to another.
Did you find a better life?
In a way, yeah.
Men infödda britter blir allt mer tveksamma till att 250 000 icke-europeer invandrar varje år.
I think it's quite unfair how they can just come over and without a degree or anything and end up with a job and we don't have any jobs by the end of a degree.
So people with degrees end up having waitressing jobs when we should hopefully be getting better jobs than that.
Den konservativa regeringen i Storbritannien vann makten delvis på grund av sina löften att begränsa invandringen. Och de har nu beslutat att till år 2015 så ska de begränsa den icke-europeiska invandringen kraftigt. Och beslutet lyder: invandringen ska ner från 100-tusentals invandrare per år till 10-tusentals.
I used to feel like a caring country, but now it's like every man for themselves, basically.
There's a very bad misconception about how immigrants are bad and how they just come here to abuse the resources that we all, like hardworking English people, work for.
Det Storbritannien som jag har besökt regelbundet sedan tonåren håller på att förändras. Hur länge till kommer alla på hotellen och kaféerna vara invandrare? Från att ha varit välkomna så betraktas de nu som konkurrenter om jobben. Och invandringstaket drabbar även de mest privilegierade invandrarna.
I think I'm very lucky. I'm very proud that I worked in NHS for over 25 years and I was recognized enough. I had God knows how many awards. I was GP of the year the whole 2009.
Invandrade läkare och sjuksköterskor från Indien, Pakistan och flera afrikanska länder utgör 30% av vårdpersonalen i Storbritannien.
I remember even seeing advertisements in India where you were seeking them to come and help us. And when things are not needed, then you just don't want them at all. How would those people feel that we have come and done the job, the most difficult jobs, the most difficult circumstances, and then you tell the door, there's a cap down, you can't come in.
På ett sånt här stort sjukhus som St. Thomas mitt i London så kan så många som hälften av alla anställda inom sjukvårdspersonalen vara invandrare. Så den stora frågan i Storbritannien just nu, det är om det här nya beslutet om att sätta ett tak för invandringen kommer innebära en katastrof för sjukvården eller om det kommer bli som de invandrarkritiska hävdar, nämligen att det blir britterna istället som tar jobben.
There are still so many services in this country which need immigrants. Whether it is science, whether it is NHS, whether it's education, we need them so that we get their resources pooled. And it's not just for this place. Why we forget that? It's a globalized world now.
De som forskar om invandring pekar hela tiden på att bilden inte är entydig. Invandringen är bra för ekonomin, men den innebär också påfrestningar, till exempel på skolor, sjukhus och hyresrätter.
There's some evidence that in the low-paid parts of the workforce, particularly low-paid, low-skill parts of the workforce, that the presence of migrant workers does contribute to unemployment. But one of Britain's, I guess, assets in the world market is our cultural assets. For example, we won the Olympic bid, I think, partly because of the idea of London in particular being a multicultural and creative city. And that creativity is certainly fueled partly by migration, certainly not just by migration.
Det är tydligt att invandringsfrågan verkar kollidera i kraftfältet mellan politik och ekonomi. Den politiska toleransen verkar minska samtidigt som landets ekonomi mår bra av att det kommer människor som vill jobba och bidra. Men i spåren av den ekonomiska krisen så blir det slagsmål om allt färre jobb. Frågan är hur politikerna ska klara av det här.
Och tidigare ikväll så pratade jag med Jean-Philippe Chessy, talesperson för internationella organisationen för migration i Genève. Och jag frågar honom om hur beroende Storbritannien och andra europeiska länder är av utlandsfödd arbetskraft i till exempel sjukvården.
Well, the healthcare system in the United Kingdom for many years has been reliant on paramedical, medical staff coming from countries further to the south. It is traditional for, let's say, Ghanaian doctors or nurses to seek employment in the UK. The National Health Service in the UK, throughout European countries, depend to a certain extent on the migration of health staff from other countries outside of the European Union.
Are Europe and the US not highest on the wish list for potential immigrants from poor countries anymore?
Well, look, countries that have engaged in immigration for many decades, such as the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, these countries obviously remain highly attractive to migrants from developing countries. European countries tend also to attract migrants, but probably less qualified migrants. That being said, I think we need to debunk some of the myths relating to migration. One of those myths is that most people want to migrate from developing countries to developed industrialized countries. The reality today is that we're seeing an increase in what we call south-south migration. So in other words, let's say a young West African health professional will tend to look at South Africa rather than Europe as a viable alternative when it comes to migration and employment opportunities.
How important are immigrants for the national economies in Europe?
Well, despite the persistent economic downturn in Europe, there is still a need for immigrants. In some sectors, such as healthcare, for instance, those needs are blatant, especially in countries like Italy that are facing aging populations. The challenge today is probably to sell those immigration programs, to show there is added value for those countries in Europe to basically accept those immigrants, which of course is not easy with the current downturn and the impact on unemployment in Europe.
Countries who have suffered brain drain, how will they convince people to move back home?
We are seeing more and more patterns of what we call brain circulation. Let me just give you a quick example. Yet again, a young West African doctor, a fresh graduate, will go and work in Europe, will acquire skills, and will identify opportunities at home, and will return for a shorter period of time to transfer those skills. So what we're seeing more and more are patterns of what we call circular mobility, which in a way mitigates the dramatic impact of the brain drain on countries of origin, especially countries to the south of Europe.